It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose. Niccolo Machiavelli. Imagine this. You're a ruler on the verge of collapse. The people smile to your face, but plot behind your back. Rivals circle like vultures. Advisors lie. Friends desert you. You want to lead with dignity, with kindness. You want to be loved. But Machiavelli leans in from the shadows and whispers, "That will get you killed." We like to think the world rewards decency, that people respond to compassion, that love is the foundation of lasting rule. But Machiavelli thought otherwise. He believed that if you had to choose, love or fear, you should always choose fear. Not because love is worthless, but because fear is reliable. You can control fear. You can't control love. In this video, we explore what Machiavelli really meant when he wrote those infamous words, and whether his cold calculation was a diagnosis of power or a blueprint for tyranny. To understand Machiavelli, you have to understand his world. The Italy of the early 1500s was a chaos machine, fragmented into warring city-states. Florence, Venice, Milan, Naples, and the Papal States all vied for dominance. Foreign armies invaded. Assassinations were routine. Alliances flipped like coins. Machiavelli lived not in a philosophical dream world, but in the blood-soaked chessboard of real politics. He served as a diplomat in the Florentine Republic, negotiating with kings, popes, and mercenaries. He saw rulers fall because they were too merciful, too trusting, too virtuous. He watched how those who survived, Cesare Borgia, for example, used fear like a scalpel, cold, calculated, effective. When Machiavelli was later tortured and exiled, he wrote The Prince not as a fantasy, but as a warning and a weapon. It was his survival manual for power. So when he says fear is safer than love, he's not theorizing. He's reporting from the front lines. Machiavelli didn't say a prince should be cruel for cruelty's sake. He wasn't advocating sadism. He was making a psychological calculation. Here's how he saw it. Love is voluntary. It's fragile. It depends on the goodwill of others, on their feelings, their loyalty, their moods. And people are fickle. They abandon you when the winds change, when your kindness is no longer convenient. But fear is involuntary. It's instinctual. It grips the heart and doesn't ask permission. You don't have to hope people remain loyal when they fear the consequences of betrayal. You know they will. And crucially, Machiavelli said, "Be feared in such a way that you are not hated." The art of fear is precision, not brutality. A wise ruler punishes rarely, but decisively, publicly, symbolically. Enough to make a point, not to cause chaos. Fear, wielded intelligently, becomes stability. And in a world where betrayal lurks behind every smile, stability is everything. There's a romantic idea that a leader beloved by their people is invincible, that love inspires loyalty, that a righteous ruler will naturally command respect. Machiavelli had no time for such illusions. He believed people love you only when it's convenient. They praise virtue when it costs them nothing. But the moment hard times arrive, famine, war, taxes, that love evaporates. A prince who depends on love will find himself abandoned when he needs loyalty most. Think about it. Would your employees still respect you if you had no authority to fire them? Would soldiers still obey if discipline was optional? Would rivals hesitate to betray you if there were no consequences? Love doesn't hold the line in times of crisis, but fear does. Machiavelli's point is brutal, but clear. You cannot afford to stake your survival on the kindness of others, especially when others are desperate, opportunistic, or ambitious. In politics, good intentions are eaten alive without teeth. Now let's bring this into the modern day. Today's leaders rarely use the word fear. Instead, they talk about strength, about being tough on crime, tough on enemies, decisive in crisis. But make no mistake, what they're selling is Machiavellian fear dressed in PR polish. From authoritarian regimes to corporate hierarchies, fear is still the engine behind many power structures. Employees fear losing their jobs, citizens fear surveillance, opponents fear retaliation. What's changed is that the mask of love, smiles, slogans, charisma, has become more refined. And that's exactly what Machiavelli warned us about, the appearance of virtue. A leader need not be good, only seem good. Behind the curtain, the machinery of fear hums silently. So when we admire leaders who get things done, who don't take nonsense, we must ask, are we responding to strength or to fear? And how often do we mistake fear for respect? Here's the twist Machiavelli leaves us with. The ideal ruler should be both feared and loved. But if you must choose, choose fear. Still, what if there's a way to blend both? Some modern thinkers argue that effective leadership comes from earned fear. That is, respect grounded in strength, not cruelty. A leader who inspires awe, but also fairness. Firm but just, not a tyrant, but a commander. It's a delicate balance. Too much fear, and you breed rebellion. Too much love, and you invite disloyalty. But perhaps the true wisdom is in knowing when to use which, and having the courage to do so. Because Machiavelli wasn't advocating evil. He was exposing the game. He wrote in a time of chaos, but his insights remain razor sharp because human nature hasn't changed. We're still drawn to power, still swayed by strength, still willing to follow those who promise order, even if it comes cloaked in fear. Machiavelli doesn't give us answers. He gives us a mirror into power, into fear, into ourselves. When we look at history, when we look at politics today, we must ask, who do we admire and why? Do we value compassion or control? Do we follow strength or do we mistake cruelty for competence? In the end, Machiavelli's genius was not in corrupting leaders, but in describing them honestly. He didn't tell us how the world should work. He told us how it does. And sometimes, that's the most dangerous truth of all. Thanks for listening.